We are in a series called Origin Story. It's about our origins as a Christian community, our impact on the world, what Christians have done who have humbly followed Jesus and tried to put his teaching into practice over and above the stories that you'll hear about Christianity in school and in college and things like that. We're trying to tell the other side of the story. And we're going to hit a heavy one tonight.
It's fine, guys.
So, it's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it.
Is this the final week of worship?
We're going to do a little wrap-up next week. And here's the deal. Like, if anybody doesn't like what I have to say, it really is an argument with God, not with me. So I don't really care.
Whoa.
Yeah, you can fight. Fight me all you want. It's not me. It's God. I'm just a messenger. Just setting you up. All right, let's bow our heads and pray. Lord, we thank you for this truth that you've given us, that you've given your people. God, it's one of the hardest visions to live out, but it's one of the most important, and I pray that you would just encourage us, that you would help us to be humble and open to your word, that we would be challenged, and also, God, that you would just bring healing, because we're going to talk about some things that remind us of pain that we've been through. And I pray for healing there. And I ask this in Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Do you ever feel in your life like there's this disconnect between what is and what should be? Right? You have these expectations about how life should be or how it should turn out, and it doesn't quite match up. Or maybe you studied hard for a test, and you're like, I'm going to nail this, I got it. And what is does not pan out. So we're in the holidays. I want to give you guys a few examples of like an ideal, what should be, and then somebody who tried to do it and put their work on Pinterest and, as we call it, nailed it. So here's what should be.
I love that show.
This, what is that? That's a minion. Gracie, that is not you or your dad. That is a minion. That's a minion cake. Beautifully done. Great coloration. And then somebody tried to make that cake.
Oh.
Nailed it.
Oh, I love that show. I saw that. You might as well call something else.
Let's look at another example. Oh, who is that? It's winter time. That's Olaf, the snow animal, the snowman, the snow, whatever he is. He's a snowman. And somebody went after that cake and made, yes. That nose is something else.
That's a demon.
Whew. Let's look at another example on the Christmas theme. Oh, we have a little lamb.
Oh, it's so
The angels went to shepherds. Lambs are a big part of the Christmas story. Look, it has hair. They use coconut for hair. How cool is that? It looks easy, right? How could you mess that up? Let's see how it turned out. Oh, no.
That's a block.
That reminds me.
That's how you
That reminds me a lot of Jabba the Hutt from Star Wars. Nailed it. Well, so if you bake or do projects like that for Christmas, you know you have to do the gingerbread house. Am I right? You got to put together a gingerbread house. And look at that one. I mean, the lines, the curves, the coloration, everything is perfect. Straightforward, right there for somebody else to do. And when they tried to copy that,
Is that Fruit Loops?
Did a middle?
I think that's Fruit Loops. That's what I did when I was a kid. My goal in gingerbread houses was pick all the candy I like and pack on as much as possible. Design optional.
That's a middle child kind of thing.
Hey, functionality.
All right. There's a difference oftentimes between what should be and what is. I want you to keep that in your mind as we talk tonight about some different things. Because we're going to talk about one of the most important world-changing teachings in the entire Bible. And it's a simple vision. Listen up, guys. It's a simple vision for marriage and family. And we're going to be real about the fact that in our lives, there's a sense of what should be God's vision and sometimes what is, which is our painful experiences and our brokenness. And we're going to look at what to do about it and how to navigate that. But first, we want to look at God's vision. Now, to understand God's vision for marriage and family, we need to do something interactive. Remember when you were kids and you had like hand motions to stuff and things like that? We're going to do that right now. I'm going to teach you with a microphone and a tablet in my hand, so it's going to be awesome. So put your hands up like this, right? Now this is one thing, another thing, and then you're going to clap, which represents unity, together, okay? And at the end of this exercise, we're all going to sing together. So let's practice the song before we get into it, right? It's just like a big band sort of thing. Does anybody know what a crescendo is?
Yes. I'm in choir. I know that.
Somebody explain a crescendo. Yeah.
It's where you start quiet, and then your sound gets like this, and it gets louder and
bigger and
louder.
bigger.
Yep. And the crescendo's the top, right? That's where it hits.
Piano, there's method
So
piano.
we're gonna practice this little crescendo together. Ready? We're gonna go. I'll do it first, and you can do it after me. We're gonna go da 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 like that. Okay.
I know Star Wars.
So let's practice. Let's practice before we do it for real. Ready? Da 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 da. Right. Perfect. We're ready. We're ready to talk about this Bible passage. All right. So, get your hands up. Get the claps ready. Get the claps ready. All right, go ahead and throw up that slide, Mr. Trevor. This is about Genesis 1, and we're going to track a pattern in Genesis 1. What's Genesis 1 about? Somebody shout it out. Okay, I'm on the Price is Right. Great. It's about creation, God creating the world in 6 days, okay? And here is pictures that represent each day. So, get those hands. First day, light, darkness, unified. Second day, waters from above, waters from below, unified. Third day, land and sea, unified. Fourth day, sun and stars and moon, unified. I don't know if I did that right, but something along those lines. Day 5, birds of the air, fish of the sea, unified. And then on the 6th day, the crescendo. All right?
Wait, what are we
No, so we're going to sing, right? Because the crescendo is the top of the passage. It's the top of the whole thing. This is the creation of the universe, and this is the pinnacle of the whole thing. Okay, so ready? Here we go. Da, 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 do, 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 do.
Isn't that a Justin Bieber song?
No.
Yeah.
And the crescendo of the whole pattern is man, woman, together.
Yay!
Unified. And children, right? So listen. Shh. Foundational to how God created everything to work, the core of humanity and society, is this picture of opposites coming together in unity. Please stop clapping, guys. I know it's exciting, but a man and a woman in marriage. And part of the purpose of that marriage is for them to raise godly children And then you create this small community where people are committed to each other, where they love each other, and where they support each other. That's the vision. It's not rocket science. So there's a couple things about it that I want to highlight that just kind of jump off the page at this point. The first thing is very controversial, just like the second thing, by the way. The first thing is that your gender is part of your calling. Okay? Your gender is part of your calling. It is part of the role that God gave you in the picture that He's trying to create. Now, within that framework, here's the cool thing. God gave all sorts of freedom for people to be different, for people to be unique, for people to play out their role differently. So what I mean by that is that if you are, for instance, a woman who's big and strong and athletic and has all these typically guy traits, then what God is looking for is not for you to become a guy or to act like a guy. God is looking for you to play out your gender as a strong woman. Right? And the same thing with a guy. If you have certain gifts or certain passions that are typically more what women do, God is not asking you to become a woman or to dress like a woman, but He's giving you freedom to be a guy with those passions. Right? So that is part of our calling that God has given us. And we have all sorts of different ways to play it out. But our gender is part of our calling. Our gender is part of our calling. Secondly, this design is obviously, if you follow the structure, clearly supposed to be played out between a man and a woman, and sex is supposed to stay in a marriage relationship between a man and a woman.
What did you say?
Sex is supposed to stay within a relationship between a man and a woman. And this principle is bared out throughout the scriptures. Old Testament, New Testament, writings of Paul. It shows up in the Gospels. It's all over the place. If anybody ever tells you otherwise, they don't know their Bible very well, even if they pretend to. So, from the beginning of time, billions of people on our planet have been blessed by this vision when they've played it out in their own lives. Entire civilizations have been blessed by this vision. In fact, for most of American history, this was completely the norm. This is what everybody expected, right? Now, it always had brokenness. It always had people having a hard time playing it out. But for most of American history, it was like, yeah, this is generally how we build a society, on this structure. It's only recently that has changed in America. There's also been billions of people throughout history who have pushed back pretty hard on this vision, including today, as you may have noticed. What? No. And that sentiment is not new either. Any of it. Any of the stuff about sexuality, about sexual freedom, about gender, about homosexuality, none of that is new. Read Greek classics from 3,000 years ago. It's filled with it. Read stuff from a couple hundred years ago. There's stuff in the Bible where there's apostles writing to churches that are dealing with the same kind of stuff that we're dealing with in America. The reason it feels new to us and we seem surprised is because for most of American history, we somewhat held to God's vision. It's just been the past 30 or 40 years that's really changed. So here's a question for you. Why do you think people push back against God's vision so much? What do you guys think? Why do people push back? Yeah, KK.
Because mainly when you believe in God and religion, it's built upon trust.
Uh-huh.
And some people just don't have that to give. And we're where someone really broke their trust and they feel they can never do that again.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, on a lot of levels, a lot of the people that I know that push back against this vision is because there's some sort of brokenness in their own family and they associate that with the vision, even if it's not how God intended it to be. So it's like they don't trust the whole structure. Yeah? Oh, I'm sorry, Lily was next.
Either they want to try to make their own vision and do it their own way, or like KK said, that something like they tried to ask for help and either he hasn't answered them yet or didn't answer them in the way that they wanted.
Those are two really great points. So first of all, it feels like boundaries. It's even oppressive, we very much want to have freedom to do our own thing, to live out our own desires, to follow our own whims, or to believe what we want to believe, especially if there's a lot of pressure in society. And so and then you hit on another point that is really powerful, which is okay, God, I want to do this, and then I have these desires and these impulses in my life, and I please take them away, and they don't go away. And all of us deal with something like that. I mean, whether it's an attraction to our own gender, whether it's doing stuff outside of marriage that we shouldn't do. And we're going to talk about this a little later, but when you get married, that doesn't go away either. There's all sorts of stuff. And so that battle and that pushback can get exhausting and cause people to want to step away from God's vision. So it's great points. Joe?
I was going to say freedom of choice.
Yep.
That we want to have our own choice and not take orders, you could say, but
Yep.
we want to choose our own path.
Yep. Do you know what I've learned about teenagers over the years? Whenever we talk about dating stuff, I've learned that just as a general rule, across the board, teenagers don't like to limit their options. They don't. And I know this because for 20 years now, I've been yelling at teenagers, the Bible says only date other Christians. And for 20 years, I've been getting these looks that feels like limiting my options too much. But I think we've come to a place where even all this other sexual stuff is coming into play. Because now it's my options are wide open, right? People don't like to limit their options, their choices. What else? Why do people push against this?
I feel like a lot of times the way that Christianity is broadcasted is not always correct. Especially, I feel like the things that get the most attention are the things that are wrong or just not biblical, and that is what people see as Christian. And so anything that is then associated with Christianity immediately gets no thought or gets thrown out the window because they've only ever seen people calling themselves Christian doing unbiblical things.
Yep, you're exactly right. And in the beginning of this series, if you remember, we said we're going to track the story of Christianity with humble people trying to live the way Jesus did. And so when people stand up and are hateful and are violent and are all these things where they're looking at certain groups of people and downplaying their humanity or treating them like trash, that's not what we're going to call our core story because it doesn't represent Jesus. And I'm actually going to talk about that in just a minute, but I want to hit one other thing before that. We like to believe in our society that love justifies everything. It's one of the reasons we push back on this. I actually saw it on a yard sign a couple of times, something about either, love wins or love is love or something like that. Now let me ask you this. Just think about this for a minute. Let's say you get married, right? And on average, people fall in love about 7 times, and oftentimes it's 3 times before they're married and 3 times after. It's very common. So let's say your spouse falls in love with someone else. The question is, they love them though. So does love justify leaving you, leaving kids, destroying your family? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because a biblical love puts up boundaries with that person and goes back to your spouse and works things out, right? That's how biblical love works. But that's just one of many, many examples where love doesn't justify just anything. Love doesn't justify what is justified is how God created things to be. But yeah, we talk about that. I hear that. So how do we address people who push back against God's vision for love and marriage and family? And I want to come back to Hua's point that she made, because we do have a rough reputation for this in the world. For some people it's earned, but it's certainly not all Christians. And I want to tell you just a quick story about a friend of mine named Drew. Drew, is that name funny? Oh, okay. It's Gru. It is Gru. This is Drew. Drew went to Bible college with me. He was a really cool guy. He had a twin brother, identical twin, and both of them did a lot of stuff on stage. They did a lot of worship stuff. They did some acting stuff. And after they graduated from Bible college, they both came out of the closet and decided they were gay. And then they lived out that lifestyle for a couple of years. And Drew, one of the twins, felt a conviction on his heart that it was wrong and he needed to leave that lifestyle. He felt like God was saying, this is not what I have for you. And so he stopped dating men and he started dating a woman and ended up marrying her. And they had kids together. And I actually went to lunch with Drew years later. Now, here's a guy who not only has lived in the homosexual lifestyle, but whose twin brother is still in the lifestyle. So if anybody gets the right to talk about that whole thing and like what to do about it and what to say about, like, this is the guy, right? And what they do at his church is they have a ministry specifically to the homosexual community. And this is how it works. They do dinners for people with AIDS. They do all kinds of stuff where they welcome people, where they love people, or they give them gifts. And they do not ever compromise God's vision for marriage and family. And so what happens is, and he told me this, people will come into their church and be like, okay, I know you don't agree with my lifestyle, but why are you loving on me so well? I mean, why are you doing all this stuff for me? Why are you being so welcoming? It's like, I know you don't agree with my lifestyle, but you're feeding me and you're reaching out to me and you want to hang out with me and you're treating me like I'm important. That's what we're supposed to do, right? You don't have to do one or the other. You don't have to do one or the other. I think Drew has a very Christ-centered model, how to push back. But here's the big thing, to push back against the world's problem with God's vision. And that is to just get better at living out God's vision. Just get better at living it out. And I want to tell you a few things about my family, bad and good, but I want to start with the good, of just some simple ways that we tried to live out God's vision of creating a supportive, loving family. And these are very practical. You can take them home to your parents. Many of you guys are doing them already. And they help a lot. So, and here's the thing that I want to mention. God's vision brings joy. That's what's so sad about what the world's doing. It's because they're pushing back on something that has great potential to bring joy. If your family is a total disaster and they are a mess and they screw up everything, if for just one day they live out God's vision, you will experience joy in that day. Isn't that something? So, when I was born, the year I was born, before I could read or talk or even walk, my parents started doing a little devotional at night with the family. And I don't remember any of those first things. I was looking for my thumb. Where's that thumb again? There it is. And they continued doing that. I have 9 younger siblings, and so eventually those devotionals became kind of a small church in the evening. But we did them relatively frequently, you know. Sometimes we would miss a few nights, but that was an important part. Dinner around the table, once or twice a week, at least, without cell phones. It's like, here's an idea. You can steal this, okay? You put a basket on the table, Everybody puts their phones in the basket. First person to touch their phone has to do dishes after dinner.
You should.
Yeah.
I love doing dishes.
Don't tell my mom.
What do you say? And when your parents ask you questions, talk to them. How's your day today? Good. Bad? I don't know. Like, talk to them. Tell them about your life. Ask about their life. Do you know that most of your parents have done amazing things you've never even heard of? They have incredible stories you've never listened to.
Oh, I listen.
Yeah.
I always ask questions.
Listen. Ask questions. Tell them about your life. It makes a big difference. My parents, almost every week, even when there was a whole bunch of kids, went on a date together with just the two of them. Because parents have to have something with each other outside of the kids. It's really important. It's really important. So they did that. And finally, we would do another thing on another night called family night, where we would go hang out as a family. And we were dirt poor. We had no money. So we would do things like go to this place called Toys R Us. You guys remember Toys R Us? Yeah. We would go to Toys R Us and we would not buy anything. We would look at toys, but just looking at toys. Sometimes you could get out what are the things you ride in? Not Hot Wheels, but Power Wheels. Get out the Power Wheels, drive up and down the aisles, try not to get caught by the Toys R Us employees. That was amazing. Free family night. Over and over again. One night, my dad told us for family night we were going to go get ice cream at Dairy Queen, and we were all excited, and he got caught up at work. And he was late getting home, and my mom had to get us ready for bed, put us in our pajamas, and we went to bed. We were so frustrated and so angry, and finally my dad got home about a half hour later, and he woke us all up, took us out of our beds, and took us to Dairy Queen late at night to get ice cream. Love my dad.
Did you fall asleep?
No, I'm kind of a night person. It's kind of my thing. So just spending time together as a family, and my parents spending time with each other. And Rachel and I have tried to implement a lot of this stuff in our own family with Hudson. In fact, a couple weeks ago, Hudson's like, Dad, I picked out a devotion I want to do as a family. It's a Christmas one. We're going to do it together. And every night, he's like, let's go do our devotion. Sit down, Dad. I'm like, okay. I guess you're the spiritual leader of the family now. Whatever.
Sounds like it.
And here's the cool thing. Stuff like this is not just for the health of your family. When families begin doing stuff like this, it actually creates health in a whole community. It serves a whole community. Isn't that something? Like just think about this, okay? Just imagine for a minute. Just imagine in your minds that every family in Bend was healthy and loved each other and supported each other. Okay? Just imagine that for a minute. How would schools and churches be different? More community? Yeah? What else?
People would have a better understanding of people.
Yeah, better communication, better understanding of each other, better able to make friends and maintain them, better able to forgive.
More love.
More love? What would there be less of?
Hate.
Less hate, less depression,
Confusion.
less drama, less stress, less mental illness, less.
Less of it.
What about homelessness?
There could still be homelessness.
There could still be homelessness, but there would be a lot less of it.
Well, and I feel like people would be kinder to homeless.
Yep.
Like, I feel like
Yeah.
a lot of times, especially with homeless, people almost don't even see them as people, and they treat them as nothing.
Yeah.
And talk bad on them, like, assume the worst of all of them, and just I feel like that's how it goes for a lot of people, though. Like, you could do that to anyone, but I feel like it especially happens to women.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. A lot of energy and time and resources goes into dealing with family drama and family brokenness. Families would have much more of that to give to people outside of their family unit because they're caring for each other. And so homeless people would be cared for, outcasts would be cared for, people with different illnesses would be more cared for. What about things like substance abuse? So much substance abuse, drugs and alcohol and other things come back to family hurts, family wounds, abuse, so much abuse. Could you imagine the generation after a generation raised by healthy families? The abuse would be almost gone. It's Rachel's career to work in that, and she will attest. It would be almost gone, because it almost always comes back to stuff with families. So it's not just for a family, it's for a community. It's for a whole group of people that God's vision begins to impact. But remember, we have this idea of what should be, and then there's what is. And we experience that too. So earlier this year, my family went through something that was perhaps the hardest thing we've ever been through. And I was in my office. Church was going on. It was a Sunday morning. I think it was around March. And I got a text from my sister that said, something bad has happened. You need to drive to Portland now. That's what it said. It's not something you ever want to read on your phone. So I had no idea what was going on, and I'm waiting for an opportunity to call her. So I eventually get on the phone with my sister, and she is crying. She can barely talk, and she gets through the sobs and says, one of our other sisters just found out that her husband's having an affair. My brother-in-law was having an affair with somebody. And it had just come to light that morning or the night before. And we had a core team meeting that day. And so I listened to her and I talked to her and I said, we'll load up as soon as possible. I called Rachel and told her that we had to go and told her what was going on. And then we had our core meeting, and in the middle of our core meeting, the sister who had been the victim of what happened called me. And if you were there, I told you guys, hey, I'm going to need to take this call. It might be a few minutes, so just hang out. And the core team was all great. I went back to my office, and I listened to my sister just basically bawl for 20 minutes straight and hardly breathe. And that was about it. I don't even know that she said much of anything. And then that night, we got in the car, we drove to Portland, and it was the angriest driving I've ever had in my life. It's a miracle we didn't get in an accident, because that was like a driving pile of road rage all the way to Portland. And all these questions go through your head. How could this happen? How could you do such a thing? And the sister that had it happen to her is like the sweetest, kindest girl you've ever met. She is an amazing woman, an amazing woman. And so then we got there, and we're there as a family. And it's just this profound brokenness. I mean, everybody. And I've been a pastor for 20 years. I've worked with families who have gone through stuff like this. I've worked with teenagers who have found stuff like this about their parents. But I've never had the victim in my arms, just like trembling, bawling for like as long as I can remember. The hurt went so deep. And sometimes that's what is. And no matter how great your family is, you've had moments of pain and suffering. Some of you have had a lot of moments like that. And some of you have moments like that coming. That's what is. And it makes sense, because Satan is real. And Satan knows how important families are. And so he works harder than just about anything else to attack our families. And then when our families are attacked and they break and they suffer and people make bad decisions and people get illnesses that have nothing to do with their decisions and people get in accidents and we suffer loss, we suffer brokenness. And then sometimes there's all these messages in the world and those make things even worse. What do we do? What do we do? Well, the first thing is that you can be encouraged because God designed the church to fill in the gaps for our families. He designed the church to be a place where if you need an uncle in your life, there's an uncle in the church that can be there for you. If you need an auntie in your life or a grandparent in your life or a parent in your life, or if you need, if you just, like your siblings are not walking with the Lord and really struggling, and you need kind of a sibling type person to encourage you in your faith and to cheer you on in your faith, then God designed the church to fill in those gaps in our lives. And here's the other thing. He's going to ask you to fill in that gap for somebody else at different points. And so to be willing to do that, to be willing to look for needs in other people's lives, to fill in the gaps and to love and support them. The second thing that's really important to remember is that in our families, we're not fighting each other. Isn't that strange? It sure feels like we're fighting each other, doesn't it? The Bible makes it clear that we're actually fighting spiritual battles that feel like battles against each other. So check out this passage real quick. This is in Ephesians, and it says, we're not fighting against flesh and blood. That means against other people. And authorities of the unseen world, against mighty powers in the dark world, and against evil spirits in heavenly places. We are fighting a spiritual battle. Have you ever gotten into a big fight in your family and nobody can remember what you were fighting about? You look back on it like a week later and you're like, I have no idea how that started. Everybody's mad at each other. It's a spiritual battle. It's spiritual things poking at you and prodding at you and trying to get you discouraged and trying to get you hurting. So you have to learn how to fight spiritual battles in order to build a healthy family. So here's a couple things that you can do to learn to fight spiritual battles. First of all, stick with someone even if you don't like them in the moment. Stick with someone. Your family is a great place to practice this. Your siblings, your parents, have it in the back of your mind that you're committed to each other no matter how much you like or dislike each other. And guess what? I'm going to tell you something. When you get married someday, there will be days where you do not like your spouse. No like, no love, no like. You'll wake up, you'll look over at them and go, you okay? And so this is important. Fighting spiritual battles means being committed to someone, staying together with someone. Now, if you're dating someone and they're like, have some crazy addiction or they keep cheating on you or something like that, that's not the time to stay committed. You still have an out. Break up. Don't get back together after you break up. Yeah, that's different. But with your family, learn to stay committed and so that you have that ability when you grow up and get married. Secondly, learning to forgive someone 1,000,000 times for the same little thing. When I was your age, the biggest things that I worried about in marriage were things like having an affair or having some major, like super painful, exploding family type thing. I worried about that, like that would happen to me or that I could do that to someone or something like that. And I'll tell you, what's really, really hard is forgiving 1,000,000 times for that same little thing over and over and over again. And knowing in the back of your mind, they're going to do it tomorrow. I just know it. How am I supposed to forgive them when I know they're going to do it tomorrow? That's fighting spiritual battles. That's fighting spiritual battles. Practice on your family. I mean, most of you never get annoyed with your siblings, right? You never get annoyed with your parents. It is perfection. Perfection. Listen, guys. If we don't practice stuff like this, then our marriages will suffer from it someday. And our families will suffer from it. And can I just be real with you for a minute? It is terrifying to talk about this kind of stuff because it's so hard to live it out for myself in my relationship with Rachel. Sometimes I do it well, and sometimes I totally screw it up and lose my temper or do the wrong thing, or I'm on my phone when I shouldn't be on my phone, or just all sorts of different things. And I'm so thankful. My dad, if my dad lost his schniz and yelled at me, he was going to apologize every single time. I just knew it. There's literally not one time in my entire childhood where he didn't come back and apologize after yelling at me. So if he yelled at me that day, I would lay in bed and just wait because I'm like, I know he's coming. I know he's coming. And he would come every time. He would come and apologize. And now I've carried that on with Hudson because I mess up sometimes. And Hudson, I'm so sorry. Can you forgive? He goes, Dad, you know I'll always forgive you. Like, love you, boy. Love you.
He was paid to say it.
Here's the thing. This vision is worth preparing for, and it's worth fighting for. And guess what else? It doesn't matter what mistakes you've made. It's a new day. It's a new day. You haven't screwed it up for your life. This vision isn't for somebody else because you've already done stuff. Like whatever it is that you've wrestled with, whatever it is you've struggled through, it's a new day. And it's worth making changes to prepare for something better. And you might even have a conversation with your family. Hey, why don't we go to a toy store? Would that be cool? Let's have dinner around the table. Let's, well, if you do this one, they're going to think you're up to something, but Mom and Dad, go out on a date. We're not going to have a party. Just invite me. I'm kidding. I don't want to go.
You can bring Hudson.
You bring Hudson. That's right. That's right. It's simple stuff. It's little stuff, but get in these rhythms and they'll make a huge difference in your family. And be thinking about the kind of rhythms that you want to implement when you grow up and get married. So this is what we're going to do. I want you to close your eyes, bow your heads. And we're going to play some worship music real softly, and we're going to spend a little time doing this, okay? So don't rush. And there's a couple things. First of all, I'm going to have the adult leaders come up and stand next to me. And while we're praying, if you just need prayer for your family or something going on in your family, they're up here to pray with you. Okay? If nobody wants to, that's fine. But if you do, then you can come up and pray with one of them or pull them aside. But in the meantime, bow your heads, close your eyes. I want you to think about your future spouse who is out there somewhere. Now, some of you might be called to be single, and if that's the case, then God will give you a special blessing to do that, but you probably don't know that. So just imagine a spouse, they're out there somewhere, and I want you to pray for them for a few minutes. I want you to think about them. I want you to lift them up, ask God to bless them, ask God to help you to become a person that can love them well, can build a family together. Take a few minutes to do that. Come up if you like, and then I'll give you something else to pray for.